What's up, Chiefs Kingdom? Noah Gray here, tight end for the Kansas City Chiefs. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe to Josh's channel and check out showmefootball.com for more.
What is up, Chiefs Kingdom? Welcome back to another video on my channel. My name is Josh Fan of showmefootball.com and arrowheadaddict.com. And today I wanted to talk about the Odell Beckham Jr. and DeAndre Hopkins rumors, which seem to be heating up as of lately. So we knew going into this offseason that DeAndre Hopkins and Odell Beckham Jr. were two potential wide receiver additions that the Kansas City Chiefs could make. There are names that have been talked about since the beginning of the offseason. DeAndre Hopkins is a little bit different because the Chiefs had to trade for him, but Odell Beckham Jr. is a free agent, and we know that the Chiefs have had past interest in him. And now with Juju Smith-Schuster off to the New England Patriots in free agency and a lot of other names off the board, it's created a situation where the Chiefs might have to trade for DeAndre Hopkins if they want a guy with experience that could come in and produce. Or they might have to take a chance on a guy like Odell Beckham Jr., who hasn't played in over a calendar year now, but when he's been healthy, he's been better than every other guy out there. But this isn't just me trying to make a connection between the Kansas City Chiefs and either Odell Beckham Jr. or DeAndre Hopkins. There are guys out there that are reporting on this. For example, Albert Breer. He did a mailbag article where he specifically stated that the Kansas City Chiefs are interested in both Odell Beckham Jr. and DeAndre Hopkins. And on top of this, Mike Jurecki, or Jurecki, I hope I'm saying this right. Either way, I feel like I got a pretty good shot at pronouncing that right. He says around the NFL circles, the Chiefs would like to add a wide receiver, whether it's Hopkins or OBJ. And then, of course, Des Bryant, the former star Cowboys receiver, got everyone riled up on Chiefs Twitter when he said he wouldn't be surprised if the Chiefs add either OBJ or Hopkins or even both. So let's talk a little bit more about both of these possibilities. So if you had asked me before free agency started whether either of these guys were likely, I would have said probably not. And I know it was the Chiefs' plan to keep Juju Smith-Schuster, or at least that's what James Palmer of NFL Network said. And then we saw Juju Smith-Schuster go to the Patriots, but it wasn't for crazy money like most Chiefs fans were fearing when it came to Juju Smith-Schuster, that they wouldn't be able to keep him because he would get paid by someone else. He ended up getting only $11 million per year. It was a 3-year deal. Why couldn't the Chiefs do that? Is it because they just weren't willing to go those financial lengths, even though it didn't seem that expensive? Was there more concern with Juju that we don't know about? You know, it was odd that they let him go for that cheap. And then even today, at the time of making this video, Mecole Hardman just signed a 1-year, $6 million deal with the New York Jets. I mean, that's nothing. Mecole Hardman was out here talking like he had a big market. He signed a 1-year deal with a bunch of incentives. Now, I didn't necessarily want Mecole Hardman back personally, but it's still surprising that the Chiefs didn't want to bring him back on that sort of deal. Just given how the Chiefs operate, I know they like to keep a lot of their in-house guys, so you know, they have to have some sort of plan at wide receiver here. There's no way they're just going to go in the next year with Marquez Valdes-Scantling, Sky Moore, Kadarius Toney as their top 3. There's just no way. And certainly not Marquez Valdes-Scantling as their wide receiver 1. So the way free agency has gone so far does make it a lot more likely that the Chiefs take a shot on OBJ or try to trade for DeAndre Hopkins. But let's talk about those options individually. So let's start with OBJ. Odell Beckham Jr., I wanted to add him when he first got cut by the Cleveland Browns in 2021. Odell Beckham Jr. was the type of player that I thought could have been the difference between a Super Bowl and not, and I think you can actually make the case that was what happened because the Chiefs could have used a secondary option like OBJ, could have made a difference in a game against a team like the Bengals, and then you saw OBJ go to the Rams, and the Rams won the Super Bowl, and OBJ was a huge part of that, and he had a touchdown in the Super Bowl. Really was good for them in the playoffs. And then, you know, I had interest again in OBJ as well this past season when he was going on his little free agent tour. But then, you know, I noticed this started dragging out, and OBJ talked about, you know, on that podcast, I think with LeBron James, how he might not sign with a team until after Christmas. And it's like, all right, I'm done messing around with this. I don't care for OBJ anymore. And now he's been out of football for a full calendar year. And then you add that in with the fact that he's on the wrong side of 30. He just tore the same ACL again that he tore earlier in his career. And it seems like his contract demands don't really match his profile. because there's been reports that OBJ wants $20 million a year. And then OBJ came out on Twitter and said, no, I don't want $20 million per year, but I want more than 4, because I guess some team offered him 4, and that's what he was alluding to on Twitter. I don't think OBJ wants $20 million a year necessarily, but I do think that it's very clear he wants more money than teams want to offer him, which is why he's not signed by now. And it seems like he also wants a multi-year deal, which makes sense. You know, he wants that financial security. You know, this late in his career, he's trying to get as much as possible. But I understand also why teams don't want to give him that. And we just want to see it, dude. Like, we want to see you prove that you can still run with these guys. I totally get why the Chiefs have interest, but if this one's going to happen, if the Chiefs are going to bring, or if they're going to bring in OBJ, which I wouldn't hate, you know, I have questions about it at this point, just like I have questions about DeAndre Hopkins, and I'll get to that when I talk about him. But it's going to have to be for the right price. It's going to have to be a lower base salary with a lot of incentives, kind of like they gave Juju last year when they wanted to see him prove it. It's going to be a deal like that. It's going to have to be. And it seems like OBJ thinks higher of himself than a contract like that, but you know, that's just what it's going to have to be. I don't think the Chiefs are willing to pay any crazy amount for Odell Beckham Jr. I still like OBJ the player. I think he can help out at this point in his career still. How much is the question, though, and how much is that going to be worth? Then there's the possibility of trading for DeAndre Hopkins, who I think it's a safe bet to say at this point that DeAndre Hopkins is probably the better player, or at least we've seen him be the better player more recently than OBJ. And I mean, he's been on the field. Hopkins has his own problems with injuries. Sure, the last couple of years haven't been perfect, and then he had the PED suspension. So neither of these guys are spring chickens, but they could probably still both contribute and help the Kansas City Chiefs. And we're just at a point in the offseason where these are the options that you have. Or there could be someone out there that we're not really thinking of, which that might be a possibility as well. But right now, the discussion, a lot of stuff is heating up about OBJ or DeAndre Hopkins. It's been reported that the Arizona Cardinals want a second-round pick for DeAndre Hopkins, but when you look at some of the more recent trades that have gone on this offseason, Jalen Ramsey got traded for like a third-round pick. Brandon Cooks went to the Cowboys for a fifth-round pick. Brandon Cooks has been a perennial 1,000-yard receiver. If that's what these guys are going for, DeAndre Hopkins isn't going to fetch a second-round pick. I understand that's what the Arizona Cardinals want. That's just not what they're going to get. That's not what the market says he's worth. And on top of that, he's got a pretty big contract. It's not as bad as some people think. It's not as bad as when you look at it at first glance. And if Arizona is to trade him, his cap hit goes down because it's not the team that he's going to on the hook for everything. A lot of it will be dead cap counted towards Arizona, not the Kansas City Chiefs if the Chiefs were to trade for D-Hop. So it would be like $19 million the first year of the contract and then $14 million the second year. It's not that bad. And I'd be willing to bet that DeAndre Hopkins at least has a couple more productive seasons in him, and that's all he would be under contract for. So a DeAndre Hopkins trade wouldn't be the worst in the world. And if you're giving up a third or a fourth round pick, something like that at this point, it's not a bad deal. It really isn't. But I'm not going to say there's zero risk, because there is a little bit of risk. Yeah, he had 700 yards in 9 games last year, but he had his lower body injuries kind of give him trouble again. The same injury that he had surgery on the year before was the same one that came up again this year, even after all that time off, even with the PED suspension. So that's a concern. And then DeAndre Hopkins is, 31 or about to be 31? That's usually the age where wide receivers start to fall off a little bit. If you guys remember Julio Jones, before he went to the Tennessee Titans, Chiefs fans were talking about trading for Julio Jones. When the Titans traded for him, Julio Jones had like 400 yards the year the Titans traded for him. His body just completely broke down. He was done. He was 31 years old as well. It had been a couple years since he had 1,000 yards. He was done. And it all came burning down quickly. And I would hope that's not the case with DeAndre Hopkins if the Chiefs acquire him, but very similar situation to what D-Hop is in right now. Ultimately, I wouldn't be mad if the Chiefs got D-Hop. He instantly becomes your best receiver, in my opinion. There's questions about his health, his durability, how well he's going to hold up at this point in his career. But it might be worth a shot. And I think if you were to trade like a third-round pick for DeAndre Hopkins, it's no harm, no foul. There's a lot worse you could do with a third-round pick. In the end, if you ask me who I'd rather have between these two players, I know there was talks about the Chiefs getting both of them. I think that's very unlikely, and I think that would take a lot of money. You'd be putting a lot of money in the receiver position if OBJ is wanting a little bit and DeAndre Hopkins is getting paid, upwards of $10 million, and you already have Marquez Valdes-Scantling, who's making a little bit of money himself. That's not likely. But if you ask me who I'd rather have between these two players, I'd rather have DeAndre Hopkins, the player. I think he's probably better than OBJ at this point. But I might rather have OBJ the deal if you can get him for the right price. Because you're going to be paying DeAndre Hopkins a little bit of money, quite a large chunk of money no matter what. OBJ, there is the possibility his price comes down. You get him with a base salary of $4 million, and he can make up to $10 or $11 million in incentives. And that might be the better deal. So that's the best that I can answer that question. But I'd like to hear from you guys. Who do you want between DeAndre Hopkins and Odell Beckham Jr.? Do you have concerns about either of those guys? Do you agree, disagree with me on anything? We'll love to hear from you guys. But yeah, that's all I got for this one. I just wanted to give you guys a quick update on the situation surrounding DeAndre Hopkins, Odell Beckham Jr., and the wide receiver market. We're all going to be watching this closely over the next several weeks, and we'll see what happens. But yeah, guys, with all that being said, make sure you like, share, and subscribe so more Chiefs fans can find this. And make sure you check out my work on showmefootball.com and arrowheadaddict.com. And I will see you all in the next one. Go Chiefs!